Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. And today is what I call one of our lucky days because we have a returning guest whom we much admire. Her name is Anne Perry. The title of the book is Long Spoon Lane. And it is a novel, and I will add, featuring Charlotte and Thomas Pitt, which is always good news, and it's published by Ballantine Books, and thank you for stopping by.
My pleasure, as always.
You know, there's a note from your publisher that this is a book that evokes the terrifying, sometimes deadly drama of our own times, what with a terrorist-type bombing followed by big police actions, police to be armed, given special search warrant properties. And I read that and I said to myself, a phooey. I'm not going to read Anne Perry for that. What I'm going to read Anne Perry for is so that she can again take me back to another place and another time and entertain me.
Well, I hope it does.
It does. I'm going to prove it. You do this on page 84. The lamplight on the side of her face cast the shadow of her lashes on her cheek. Her slender hands pulled the needle through the linen she was mending, and he was glad he had not disturbed her peace. This is Mr. Pitt walking in on Mrs. There was no sound in the room, but the slight tick of her needle against the thimble as she stitched, the sight, the near silence but for the needle, and the faint wicker of the flames. It was uniquely, perfectly comfortable. It was safety, companionship, the kind of unspoken ease that was the real prize at the end of each day, more than food or warmth, more than time in which to do whatever he wished. It was the certainty that it all mattered. Whether they agreed or differed, they were on a crusade for something they both cared about, victorious or defeated, full of energy or too tired to think. She was there for him.
I don't remember writing that, but I'm glad I did.
You see, that's why I read Anne Perry. I don't care how many people get killed or how deep the mystery is. At some point, you throw a passage like that at us, and to me, it makes me think about how wonderful life can be, how deep love can be, how wonderful romance can be, no matter your age. And that's worth the price of the book, as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's worth the price of life, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, the other thing that you continually do in your books is you educate.
Thank you.
Educate to get me to learn certain phrases. Now, one I did not have a chance to look up, and I do want to ask you about a fellow by the name of Tanqueray.
Yes.
Lovely name. I mean, there's gin in a green bottle that
Yes.
I quite admire. A man by the name of Tanqueray, he's in the Parliament.
Yes.
And he's called a jam tart of a man.
Oh.
It sounds terrible.
It was meant to be offensive.
It sounds terrible. I mean, if I called my producer that, he would cut the show off the air.
It was meant to be offensive. It was describing somebody that's a bit sweet, pleasant to look at, probably tastes quite nice, but no substance.
How lovely.
I haven't actually heard anybody described as a jam tart of man, but it just seemed the right sort of...
Did you find that phrase in research, or did you wake up one morning and say, this guy is a jam tart of a man?
I woke up one morning and I thought, yes, that's what he is. Quite pleasant, but not a lot of use.
Oh, dear me. All right, now, we have certain listeners who insist that when I interview a novelist such as yourself, that we not get so engaged in things that, I get in love with. We talk about the plot.
Oh, dear. Okay, well, let's get to business then.
Anarchists have blown up a bunch of houses.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about the houses that they blow up, they don't blow up the houses of the rich. They blow up the houses of the poor.
They blow up the houses of the poor, but they blow up a row of houses which includes the home of a corrupt policeman.
Aha. Which immediately, lets you know how sinister this is. The one of the persons killed is the son of a man from Parliament.
Well, actually from the House of Lords, not the House of Commons.
Well,
it is Parliament, yes.
All right.
But there's a distinction between the upper house and the lower house. Now, he is probably one of the anarchists. It's when the anarchists are chased from the bombing site and cornered in Longspoon Lane, and there's a gun siege, and finally they break into the building. They capture 2 anarchists alive. At least one escapes, and one is found dead. Not killed by the police bullets because of the way he's lying and the way he's facing. It has to have been shot from behind.
Although people do accuse the police of doing it.
Well, naturally.
Yeah.
Don't we always?
But those are anarchists who do that, and what can I tell you? The interesting thing about that boy is that, and he's done, but what's not done is the way his father kind of remembers him and defends him.
Yes.
And loved him for being the kind of very out liberal that he was.
Well, the father tended to be liberal, and there are good reasons why they should kill a liberal's son so that he will stop being liberal and become a good deal more right-wing and agree with them.
The response to all this is a bill before the Parliament calling for more guns for the police, more freedom to search and seize.
Yes.
Consequences of all that we're going to look at when we return.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
This is Conversations on the Coast. It's another good day for us. It's an Anne Perry day. The title of the book is Longspoon Lane, a novel featuring Charlotte and Thomas Pitt, about which your friends at Booklist said, arguments about broadening police powers as a reaction to terrorist activity can't help but strike a chord with American readers, who will appreciate the cleverly orchestrated political machinations as much as the personal agendas. And that's the thing that's really good here. I mean, you have the political...
I like those people.
And you have the personal. Yeah.
Yes.
They caught it here. One of the most fascinating things, I think, about the legislative issue here is the sidebar, if you will, the thing that's going to be tacked on to this bill.
Yes.
Which is the right for police to question domestic servants without the knowledge or permission of anyone else in the house.
And remember that at that time, almost everybody had servants. It's not just a few. Almost everybody.
It's a charter for blackmail.
Well, it is, because if you ask servants, did this happen or that happen or what was said, they are only saying what they remember or what they feel pressured to say.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask 2 or 3 different people about what somebody said, you'd come up with 2 or 3 different answers, not necessarily intended to be lies, but they may not have understood. They may have caught part of it. They may have misremembered. I mean, how often have you had somebody say to you, but you said so-and-so? You say, no, I didn't say this, I said that, which is slightly different.
My evil mind came up to our time.
Yes.
What would happen... The parallel, in my mind, would be giving the police or the authorities the right to jump into our computers, jump into our phone lines and our cell phones,
and know what you borrow,
and destroy our privacy,
and know what you borrow from the library without necessarily knowing why. You might wish to borrow...
Well, we have that now, actually.
You might wish to borrow Mein Kampf because you want to study how this came about, not because you agree with it, but they won't ask you why you borrowed it. They'll just know that you borrowed it. Or Das Kapital, you may because you disagree with it and you want to prepare an argument against it. Without reading it, you can't do that.
Let's get away from the political. One of my favorite of your continuing characters kind of blooms in this book, I think, Gracie.
I've got plans for Gracie in the next one, big plans.
Well, Gracie, who is far more than a maid, and her loyalty was passionate. And the difference between Gracie and the other servants who come in and out of your novel, I think, is that Gracie can become engaged in the conversation of the, quote, real people, unquote.
Yes, she can.
And she does a hell of a job.
I love Gracie. The difficulty is that as she's growing up, it's natural that she should have a romance. It's natural that she should get married. Once she's married, she's not going to stay working domestically for Charlotte. I mean, she can't.
Yeah.
But it's time I did something about it. But she's going to go out with a grand bang in the next one, believe me. You can't imagine how grand the bang is going to be. I don't mean anything's going to happen to her permanently. I mean, she's going to marry Tillman and...
Well, in this novel, she's out with Tillman.
Yes.
And she was clinging onto his arm, largely to keep herself from being separated from him in the crowd. It was a good feeling, warm and sweet. Heaven knows he had waited long enough for her even to speak civilly to him. He remembered her original scorn towards him. She had swept by him with her chin in the air, which was an achievement considering she barely made 5 feet and was as scrawny as a two-penny rabbit.
Yes.
And he's a big guy, relatively speaking.
Well, he's bigger than she is. Yeah.
But she had enough spirit for 2 women twice her size. That's my girl.
Yeah, that's Gracie.
And Tillman had been fascinated from the beginning. Yes, he was. Admittedly, he had deceived himself for nearly a year that it was irritation with her meddling that moved him. Nothing else.
Well, he wakes up slowly.
Eventually he wakes.
Yes.
He's a little slow on the
Well, he's naturally reluctant because she does treat him badly to begin with.
Yeah. And he has, built-in excuses. The case keeps pulling him away. He can't keep his dates with her. Yeah, so forth. Baloney. Now, they're out together, and they go to a... I don't know what it is, but it's a place...
Music hall, I think.
Yeah,
yes.
With a show. And I just would like to share with our folks what was on the bill that night. It was an excellent bill, you say. An acrobat, a juggler, 2 contortionists who worked together, a dancer, several singers, and 2 first-class comedians. He had bought Gracie chocolate and mint humbugs. What's a mint humbug?
It's a striped sweet that has a sweet flavour and also a peppermint flavour. To suck. Yeah.
All right, okay. Well, I'm not finished with Gracie because I love her so much. A few more words about Gracie, and also I want to get perhaps to some of the parallels with the plot line here and what's going on in the world today.
Good.
We'll do that as soon as these commercials are said.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
Long Spoon Lane is the title of the book. It's a novel featuring Charlotte and Thomas Pitt. It's written, of course, by Anne Perry, who's given us the wonderful gift of stopping by yet again on one of her incredible tours. She's been in every major and minor city in America, and she's still got the Northwest to do. And she looks good. She looks good. Now, Publishers Weekly said, Perry manages to paint a convincing historical backdrop with echoes of modern-day fears of urban terrorism. And I suppose that we should get to that. But before we do, I need you to read a section of the book which I call Gracie Has Got It Right, about the mystery of it. And I can't read it because of the way it's written. Please proceed.
I knew there was a reason why you were getting me to do this. You don't have to tell me, she retorted, still whispering fiercely. I can work it out myself. Them anarchists blew up houses what belongs to a Rosa from Cannon Street, on purpose like. Parliament's busy trying to make laws to give you all guns, what Mr. Pitt don't want, because he says he'll just make policing harder by putting everyone's back up agin you. And his old station at Bow Street is run by a scheming sod, as we all know, he's head of the inner circle, what near killed Mr. Pitt before.
That's great. Thank you very much. And she does. She has it. She's starting to come forward as a more major character. She's got finally a little bit of action in her love interest besides sneaking him food out the door.
Yes.
Which is one of the things they did before. Now they're out on a date, and she has got it right.
They're engaged now.
Yes. One of the people in the book whom I absolutely hate is Edward Denoon?
Yes, he's
Edward Denoon, who has a paper, and everybody reads the darn thing.
Yes, but he's editor of one of the big
They
papers.
read, and then they start taking action. He sounds like, Rupert Murdoch.
No comparison
No
intended.
comparison.
But, the editor of a newspaper can make a lot of difference to what people think, because although we think we don't believe newspapers or films or television, subliminally I think we tend to.
Mm-hmm. Even today?
Yes, I'm afraid so. I think that the media can have an effect upon us. We may not think it does, but how much of our history do we actually get from film and television? How much do we know or not know about other people because of what we read and what we see?
Probably all of it.
Yeah, probably.
When you come right down to it, yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that was different here is that because of what he said, many important people sprung into action.
Yes.
And I suppose the same thing happens in Washington, D.C., or Sacramento, our state capital.
Well, if we are not present at an event, or we don't have somebody we know personally that we trust who's present, all we do know is what we see on television, which is edited, of course, and selective, or we read in newspapers, which again is edited and selective. Mm-hmm. And people can use pejorative language. Just think, for example, so-and-so claimed to be, and immediately we think, but they aren't.
Yeah.
If they just said, we would believe. But you can slant things.
Mm. The other thing that's bothersome, I think, is the anonymity of so many quotations,
yes.
And a source close to.
Yes, exactly.
And nobody, comes out. In fact, there's a major lawsuit now.
Is there?
in this country about an agent of the CIA, a woman, being outed.
Yes, I have heard of that.
And
this is
now, going through the courts.
Yes. Even in the north of Scotland, I've heard of that one.
Yeah,
we do take an interest in what happens in your country. It's too important not to.
I appreciate that.
It's too important not to.
Now, one of the things that happens at the end of this book, I don't want to get into any details, is that I think I'm free to say that a couple of characters will not be back.
That's right. You can take people just so far, and then it becomes repetitive.
Boring.
Yes.
Yep.
And if I'm bored, you're going to be bored too. Let's hope you're not bored before I am.
Oh, dear. The book opens up with this, loud bang, if you will,
yeah.
The fire and everything, and it's all based on certain what happened in London in 1893.
Yes.
And are there any parallels with what happened there and caused, quote, terrorism, and what happened recently that causes what we think of as terrorism now?
Well, the parallel that I'm looking after is how do we react when we're afraid?
Okay.
Because I think very often fear is the cause of some of our least fortunate decisions, our knee-jerk reactions, our attacks before we are attacked, when sometimes we weren't going to be. When we are frightened, we make decisions that don't always engage our brains fully. And I'm talking about humanity in general, in all sorts of circumstances, not just political, but personal.
Yeah, you get involved with something called a preemptive strike.
Yes. But even just on a personal level, when you're frightened, it does muddy your thinking.
It does. Yeah, it does. Oh, well, hey, get this book. It's another novel featuring Charlotte and Thomas Pitt.
And Gracie.
And
Great Aunt Vespasia.
Hey, Gracie. It's called Long Spoon Lane. We've been talking to the author, Ann Perry. This is Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Thank you.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.